Hello everyone and welcome to this week's PCB webinar event on the overview of risk management based on the ISO 31000 standard. I am Britt, Product Marketing Manager at PCB International. Thank you for sparing some time to participate in this webinar. Today's presenter is Mr. Alkesh Mishra, Director at Moulik IT Services LLP and is one of our successful partners in India. I would like to point out to the audience that during the webinar session, please write any questions or comments you may have in the chat box in the control panel that you can find on your screen. Mr. Mishra can respond to them at the end if there is any time left, and we will respond to the rest through email. Mr. Mishra, please proceed with your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Britt. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of you, and welcome to this webinar session. It's overview of risk management based on ISO 31000. My name is Alkesh Mishra, and I represent you this webinar. I own an education company named Moulik IT Services LLP, which is based in Hyderabad, India. And I have spent about 20 years working with multinational companies like CSE, IBM, and Wipro Technologies. Currently, we offer about 60 plus training programs to our customers, and Moulik IT Services is accredited by Exin, PeopleCert, APMG, ISSC, GAQM, and PECB, to name some of the international accreditation and certification bodies. We are also happy to inform that we are PECB Platinum Partner in India. With our partners, we deliver training to companies like Microsoft, Oracle, Deloitte, and Barclays Bank, to name few of the customer. And we are very much focused in delivering very high quality training to our customers. And our customer keep on coming back to us for various training and certification. I am ITIL Expert certified. I also hold PMP and Prince2, Togaf, Cobit, and lots of other technical certification other than few of the ISO trainings. Here we have agenda of webinar. I will talk about what is ISO 31000 and what is risk management, why risk management is important to identify and manage risk, and how ISO 31000 help in this. I will also give complete overview of risk management based on 31000. So let's get started. Next slide talks about what is ISO 31000. It is basically a standard which is developed by international standard organization. It provides principle, framework, and processes for effective risk management in the organization. ISO 31000 can be used by any type of industry or any type of organizations. For example, IT organization can use ISO 31000, mining, chemical, or pharmaceutical. Any type of organization can very well implement ISO 31000. This means that it is a very generic framework, which is a generic standard which can be very well applied. This standard can be applied to any type of risk, like human-related risk, technology-related, related risk, etc. So it is suitable for very small organization to very big organization, or even a public sector or government organization. Also, this standard can be tailored to suit organization requirement. This means can be implemented to a single process, single function, single department, or a whole enterprise-wide organization. Next slide talks about what is covered in ISO 31000. So ISO 31000 standard is very nicely defined and prepared. The standard covers 4 important areas, and they are basically risk management terms and definitions, principles, framework, and processes. 31,000 standard work on principle, which basically provide guidance, and there are about 11 principles which define ISO 31,000. Standard has a risk management framework, which is a set of component that provides the foundation and organization arrangement for designing and implementing, monitoring, reviewing, and continually improving risk management throughout the organization. So principle provides guidance for framework, and frameworks takes care of designing, implementing, monitoring, reviewing, and improving areas. And then there are 7 well-defined processes in ISO 31000. These processes can be very well iterative and interact to each other to provide result of information for result of risk management. We will see more information on this in next few slides. So next slide talks about what is risk. Various framework have given different definition of risk. However, they are all more or less same. So standard has given definition which says that effect of uncertainty on objective. So let's try and translate this definition in example. So an organization want to add maybe 20 new customer in this next 6 months time, which can be one of the objective of organization to add more customer. What are the various things which could stop or adding these 20 new customer? For example, government policy changes which may not be favorable and may impact adding these 20 new customer. Maybe not enough time available to reach potential customer and convince them to work with organization. May not be having the right capability or resources available to add 20 new customer. All these are example of potential risk which are basically impacting our objective to be achieved. Some of the generic example of risk are given in the slides, like there is a risk when we cross the road and launch ski, as there is no certainty that the product which is being launched will be successful. So it makes lots of sense to do the identification, analysis, and evaluation of potential risk, and then decide how do we work with these risks. So risk management based on the ISO 31000 basically provides a methodical approach to identify, evaluate, assess all the possible risks and develop suitable strategy with those risks. Let's look at the next slide. What is business risk? So objective of any business is not only to survive but basically grow. It is imperative that business identify all the risk and manage them. Some of the business related risks are listed here, which you can see. Lower than anticipated profit. How can we identify all the uncertainty and ensure we achieve profit which are anticipated, which we can anticipate? Business plan to stop business from making profit. As a result, those uncertainty actually become true, and organization has to spend lots of resource to manage those issues, which resulted into making losses. So business has various risks which are there on their way. Some more of business risk given could seriously hamper growth of any business and stop achieving business objective. Government or regulatory policy changes can also impact the business. Economical, climate changing, or sales volume drop. All these are possible example of various business risk. So knowingly or unknowingly, we keep on doing risk identification and management. It is also based on our learning from past mistake which we made. So when we cross road, we look left and right and then left again before we cross the road. Similarly, we wash our hand with soap before we eat to ensure we protect ourselves from germs and associated sickness. Um, all these are various risk management uh, methods which we apply in our day-to-day life. Risk is always in future. For example, there are chances of rain in the evening today. When we go out, we might get wet and fall sick. At the moment, it is not happening. It is expected to happen later in the evening. When evening comes, it might rain or not rain. If it rain, it might be light rain, medium rain, or heavy rain. Each of these risk scenario impact us differently. When evening comes, it is not raining, means risk did not occur and goes away. In case it is raining, means risk is really occurring. When risk occur and start impacting us, we call it issue or we call it problem, which we have to deal with. So it is important to identify all risk and plan to deal with them to be successful. Generally, every organization has risk appetite and they are willing to take that risk. The bottom line is that every organization will take the risk with which they can very well survive. So a small organization may take few thousand rupees or few $1,000 risk, whereas big organization may take few $1,000,000 risk. It's all based on the organization appetite. How ISO 31000 can help us or as individual or the professional or in organization. So risk management based on the 31000 helps increase the likelihood of achieving objective and being successful by planning and managing all the possible risk. It basically encourages proactive management of risk, which means we identify those risks before they are really occurring, and we have a plan how do we deal with those risks and how do we take benefit from each of these scenarios when they occur. Identify and treat risk. Treating means how do we deal with each risk. There are multiple ways of dealing with risk, like we avoid the risk, we transfer those risks to somebody else so that we are covered financially. Mitigating those risks means minimizing the negative impact of all the possible risks to a bare minimum with which we can very well survive. Or improving the identification of negative and positive risk. Negative risk are the risk which are going to impact us in negative ways, means we might have delay, we might have loss, etc. Whereas positive risk are the opportunities they present, so we might be able to capture those opportunities and get additional benefit out of it. The other things can be compliance to legal and regulatory requirement. Now these days risk management is one of the important compliance and legal or regulatory requirement imposed by various framework, regulation, and sometimes even customer requirements are imposing us to identify risk and work with them. Risk management also help us in improve reporting and the governance of enterprise, governance of risk area. It provides improved customer and stakeholder confidence that the work which we are doing or the organization which is running is going to be successful. It also provides improved decision making based on the various risk analysis, and after every risk analysis we have multiple options to deal with those risks. We select the best possible option which help organization. We also have improved effectiveness and efficiency as a result of risk management activities. So the question comes, when should I use ISO 31000? It's a good question that The best answer is that when you get opportunity to identify any potential risk and do something to ensure those risks do not impact you, system or network admin need to do risk the database person need to identify possible risk in his day-to-day work or database area. Operation manager or shift manager or IT manager need to manage risk in their own area, which includes various things, including people risk and other things. Project managers are expected to manage project related risk. Finance manager are expected to manage finance risk, or even administration manager are expected to manage facilities, vendor or health and safety related risk. So I feel all employees in any type of organization are required to gain knowledge on risk and its management to be successful in their role and contribute to the organization's success. Many of these learning can be equally utilized in a day-to-day personal life as well. Let's see the complete overview of ISO 31000 principles, framework and processes. As discussed, principles provide guidance for the creation of framework, and framework define processes. Performance of processes are monitored and evaluated for continual improvement purpose, and the feedback is given provided back to the framework area. So it's a continuous improved cycle which keeps on happening, and the framework and processes gets improved. Let's look at the ISO 31000 principles. So we earlier spoke that there are 11 principles on which ISO 31000 work. The first principle is risk management creates and protects the value. So risk management contribute to the demonstrable achievement of objective and improvement of performance. For example, human health and safety related requirements, security, legal and regulatory compliance, public acceptance, environment protection, product quality. So various areas, risk management basically creates and protects value. So very important principle. The second principle is management is an integral part of all organization process. This means that the risk management should be done not only by the risk department or the IT department, but it has to be done by all the department, all the function, and all the processes which they use. For example, IT will identify all the possible IT related risk or the risk which are associated with IT processes or IT people. Similarly, human resource department or administration department will also take care of the risk management in their own area. If only one function or department takes care of the risk management, then organization as a whole is not working on the risk management. So it should be an integrated approach across all organization processes. The third principle, it talks about risk management is part of decision making. Whether we should do something or we should not do something is very clearly based on the risk identification and how much risk we can work with. It's a decision which has to be taken, and based on the available information we take decision. Next principle is risk management explicitly address uncertainty. Yes, as name suggests, risk is all uncertainty which we have in day-to-day work or operation or project. So risk management address uncertainties which are there. The next principle talks about risk management is systematic, structured, and timely. This means a systematic, timely, and structured approach to risk management basically contributes to efficiency and to consistent, comparable, and reliable result. We have nice principles defined, we have framework defined, we have processes defined. They are done in a right time. That means they are done in advance before those risks are occurring. We are evaluating them in a proper order. We are developing a response plan for all of these risks. Is basically systematic, structured, and in a timely manner. The next principle talks about risk management is based on the best available information. This means when we are identifying those risks, we may have limited information available to us. Based on the limited available information, we might make some assumption related to those risks. At the first available opportunity, those assumptions must be validated so that information is more and more precise available, and our decision, which is based on the available information, is refined again and again. So risk management is basically a continuous process. It's not that it will only happen in the beginning. It will happen every day. Those risks which are identified will be revalidated again and again over a period of time. They might become a smaller risk, they might become bigger risk, and they might require a different response strategy altogether over a period of time. And some of these risks which might have identified in the beginning might not be true now. They might have already gone. So risk management is a continuous process, and it is based on the best available information. Next principle talks about risk management is tailored. This means risk management process can be very well tailored to fit the context of the organization or the risk profile of the organization. We can define and fine-tune all the processes which are there and see what best suitable to our organization, our type of work, and implement that. Next principle talks about risk management takes human and cultural factor into account. It recognizes the capabilities, perception, and interaction of external and internal people that can facilitate or hinder achievement of the organization's objective. So it takes care of the cultural issues as well, which can be there in the organization. Next principle talks about risk management is transparent and inclusive. Appropriate and a timely involvement of stakeholder and particular decision maker at all level of the organization. All these ensure that the risk management remain relevant and up to date. Involve all the stakeholder, allow us to properly do the analysis and management of all the possible risk. And the principle says that none of these risks should be hidden. We should have a transparency where all the risks are informed to the important stakeholders so that they are prepared about those risks, and we have more chances of successfully dealing with those risks. Next principle talks about risk management is dynamic, iterative, and responsive to the changes. Risk management continually looks at the identifying more risk, evaluating existing risk, and identifying whether they are occurring in near future or long term, and we have associated plan to deal with them. So it's a very dynamic process. It will keep on happening. It's iterative process. It will happen again and again, and it is responsive to the changes which are happening. For example, we identified that crude oil will become costly and we plan some reserve around it, some funds available to deal with when crude oil become costly. But over a period of time, because of the economic condition or global scenario changing, crude price may be becoming lower or maybe becoming higher than anticipated. So risk management can very well deal with these changes when, as and when they are occurring, because risk management is responsive to the changes which are happening. And the last principle talks about risk management facilitate continual improvement of the organization. It's a continuous process. We learn from our mistake which we made in the past, and we work to ensure that these mistakes are never repeated again and again, and we keep on improving our risk identification process, risk evaluation assessment process, risk response plan, and the risk management itself continuously improves. Next slide talks about risk management framework. If you look at the diagram, the gray areas where mandate and commitment is written, mandate and commitment is required from senior management for successful implementation of ISO 31000 in the organization. Without management commitment, successful implementation may not be possible. When management provide commitment, they also need to provide clearly defined policies, process, procedure, roles and responsibility. They need to provide enough resources to manage the risk throughout the organization. And while all these resources and documentation and the process procedure are provided, another important responsibility lies with management, which says their commitment is that they must evaluate and review the risk management process throughout the organization on a periodical basis. Now, some of the time we see that organization will implement risk management or other framework, but management stop doing review and monitoring, and we lose the focus in those areas, and we go back to the old way of doing it. After mandate and commitment, we see another second block which says design of framework for managing risks. So we have designed a nice framework for managing the risk which has free of the activities. From there we go and implement those risk management, and then we keep on monitoring and reviewing the framework, and we keep on looking at improvement of the framework. So some of you might correlate it to a PDCA cycle, Plan, Do, Check, Act, which is a continuous improvement cycle. The framework created based on the PDCA cycle. So we plan for improvement, we implement improvement, we monitor and review and check the result coming in, and we improve from there and do the replanning and rebranding activity. Now let's go to the second gray box once again, design of framework for managing the risk. Understanding the organization and its context is required. Every organization has different way of dealing with various risks, and small organization may take a very small risk. The bigger organization may take bigger risk based on their appetite. So framework understand every organization's its own context and can be tailored for the suitability. Framework must establish risk management policy, and policy provides direction for the implementation of risk management. This has to be integrated on all the processes within all the department in organization, so that we get holistic view of risk management and it manages effectively. We must set a internal and external communication and reporting mechanism related to risk management, so that all the stakeholders are aware about all the possible risk and what are the various options available. stakeholder also get chance to contribute to risk identification, management and monitoring activities. We require resources to do successful implementation of ISO 31000, and very clearly defined roles and responsibility and accountability is essential for successful implementation, which may be achieved by creating a RACI matrix at this stage. So once framework setting is done, the next step is to implement those framework. Implementation of framework in the risk area, implementation of various processes, both will happen, and then monitoring and improvement as we discussed some time back. Next slide talks about various ISO 31000 processes. We spoke about 11 principles on which ISO 31000 work. We spoke about risk management framework. Now we are talking about ISO 31000 risk management processes. If you're looking at the diagram, these processes interact with each other. We have some of the processes which are working as a horizontal, like establishing the context, and then risk assessment activities like identification, analysis, and evaluation, and then risk treatment. All these processes are evaluate risk or do the treatment of the risk. Similarly, communication and consultation will also happen in all these stages. So that's pretty much about the overview of risk management. It has lots of in-depth information about how to identify what are the various risk identification method, what is the vulnerability, what is the threat, how do we create various response plans. All these are part of a detailed training program. It's basically
Mr. Mishra? Thank you for your presentation. It was very informative, and I think the audience also agrees. Please, if anyone has any questions, if they can write to my email, aj@pcb.com, and we will respond to them accordingly. If anyone wants to refer back to this webinar, please note that this webinar is recorded and will be available on our official YouTube channel from tomorrow. For all of you interested in GRC, please note that every Wednesday at the same time, there will be webinars on the field of GRC. So keep updated by checking our website and other communication channels on upcoming webinars. Mr. Mishra, if you want something to conclude.
Yeah, if nobody has question, then we can wind up. Please feel free to be in touch. You can find our website is listed in every page.
Okay, Mr. Mishra, I have two questions now.
Yeah.
The first one is how to compare ISO 31000 and ISO 27005.
Good question. ISO 31000 and ISO 27005 has almost about 70 to 80% same requirement, and ISO 27005 will very specifically talk about information security risk area, whereas ISO 31000 talks about only the generic risk management. However, 70% of it, both of it is same.
Okay,
A
thank you.
detailed analysis is available. If gentleman pass on email ID, I will send across to him.
Okay, I will send this to you. The second question is how to define context.
Context is defined by the organization, why they are implementing ISO 31000 risk management, what is the objective, what is that they want to achieve out of ISO 31000 implementation. So it is good that some of the senior management who are responsible for some functions or department can sit together and define the context, why they are doing it, what is the purpose of it.
Okay, I have another question that just came in. Thank you. They say thank you for the presentation. Well, we would like to thank you for taking part. The question is, I noticed that you did not refer to the ISO 31010, which is a companion standard to ISO 31000. Should they be related in risk management?
Yeah, they are included in ISO 31000 has lots of tools for risk assessment area like brainstorming, structure or semi-structured review, Delphi technique, and so on. The purpose of this webinar is to just to give the overview and not go too much deep into all the requirement and the information of risk management area. So we kept it at a little bit high level. Yes, ISO 31000 is very much part of ISO 31000 training program.
Okay, the next question is, what are the tools to define context?
This question I will answer offline. I will give the list.
Okay, I will send the contact information.
Sure.
Okay, we'll take one last question. What is the difference between ISO 31000 and MOR?
ISO 31000 is a generic risk management. It can be applied to projects as well. It can be applied to program. It can be applied to operation. It can be applied anywhere. Whereas MOR is very specifically designed for the project and program areas. So it very specifically talks about project and program, whereas ISO 31000 can be applied anywhere in the world.
Okay, thank you very much for all your questions, and Mr. Mishra, thank you for your answers. Accordingly, if we receive any more questions, I'll be sending them to your email so you can respond. Okay, I would like to thank everyone once again for participating in the webinar, and we look forward to your attendance in our upcoming webinar sessions. Please check back to our social media pages for the information on our upcoming webinar sessions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.